So it's finally here. A battery that is cheap and available.
In real world, one thing decides everything: the battery cost per car. Right now, Tesla's rumored Model 2 isn't facing just one battery path. It's facing a mix of options: ultra-long-life lithium from CATL, cheaper aluminum-ion experiments, and solid-state bets from players like BYD, QuantumScape, and Donut Lab. Each chemistry changes one simple number: how close Tesla can realistically get to $25,000. So here's the real question. Does the cheapest battery win? Does safer chemistry matter more than range? Or will solid-state leapfrog everything before Tesla even ships? In today's video, we're breaking it all down. The 7 biggest battery changes that could shape the Tesla Model 2, and what truly decides that $25,000 price tag. This is a compilation of several deep dive videos we've already published, so some parts may feel familiar. But the goal is simple: put everything in one place so you don't miss a single key detail. If you value clear, numbers first, Tesla analysis without hype. Hit like, subscribe, and help us reach 27,979 subscribers. Now let's get into it. Now a new battery claim is circulating that sounds almost unreal. 1.8 million miles of lifespan, 600 kilowatt charging, and a battery that could outlast its owner. This isn't a Tesla announcement, it's coming from CATL, the world's largest EV battery supplier. So what exactly is this new battery technology? Why is CATL confident it can survive extreme fast charging without destroying long-term battery health? And more importantly, how does this kind of battery fit into Tesla's world, where cost, scale, and manufacturing control matter more than headline specs? To understand why this battery is getting so much attention and what it could realistically mean for Tesla's future models, we need to break it down step by step. What is this new battery, and why people are paying attention? From the moment contemporary Amperex Technology Co., Limited, better known as CATL, unveiled its next-generation lithium-ion battery technology, the headlines were impossible to ignore. What caught attention wasn't just the promise of longer range or faster charging, but an audacious claim that this new battery could be charged in roughly 12 minutes and still retain 80% of its capacity after what equates to nearly 1.8 million kilometers of driving. For anyone who has watched an electric vehicle's range slowly fade year after year, or has grimaced through a charger session that eats up half an hour of your day, these numbers hit at the deepest anxieties many EV owners carry. To put it in perspective, 1.8 million kilometers is almost 6 times what most EV batteries are designed to endure before significant degradation kicks in. According to company data and reporting from international outlets, the new CATL battery, branded around a 5C rating, retains roughly 80% of its capacity after 3,000 full charge. Discharge cycles under controlled conditions, translating to that striking mileage estimate, even under extreme thermal stress conditions equivalent to a desert summer around 60 degrees Celsius. CATL claims the chemistry still holds at about 80%, after some 1,400 cycles, roughly 840,000 kilometers, without rapid loss of usable energy. Whether this battery ultimately performs exactly as advertised in everyday use remains to be seen. Mass production schedules and independent third-party validation have not yet been released, but the fact that the industry's largest battery maker is claiming these milestones at all signals, something that even casual EV enthusiasts feel viscerally. We might be approaching a point where battery life and charging speed are no longer the core limitations for the next generation of electric cars, but rather solved engineering constraints that open the door to new design priorities and customer expectations. We've all seen bold battery promises come and go, impressive headlines, limited real-world impact. Does this feel like a genuine turning point, or just another claim you've learned to be cautious about? Comment yes if this feels different, or no if you're still not buying it. How CATL pulled this off? What makes CATL's announcement genuinely disruptive is not any single headline number, but the way those numbers coexist without collapsing into the usual trade-offs. In battery engineering, longevity, fast charging, and thermal stability normally pull against one another. Pushing one almost always compromises the others. CATL's claim is that it has bent, if not broken, that triangle, and understanding how requires looking beyond surface chemistry names and into how the cell is built, protected, and managed at scale. According to CATL-linked disclosures analyzed by Clean Technica and Battery Tech Network, improvements in cathode coating, uniformity, and electrolyte formulations are key to suppressing these degradation pathways even at high C rates. This is where the 5C without killing the battery claim becomes more plausible. Under extreme, fast charging, lithium ions can fail to intercalate cleanly into the graphite structure of the anode, instead depositing as metallic lithium. Over time, that process permanently removes active lithium from the system, reducing capacity and increasing internal resistance, the silent killer of battery longevity. CATL's work appears focused on maintaining ion transport stability under high current density, using electrolyte additives and microstructural controls to keep lithium moving where it's supposed to go. Electrive's reporting notes that CATL emphasizes thermal uniformity at the cell level as much as chemistry, suggesting that heat gradients often overlooked in spec sheets are treated as first-order design constraints rather than secondary concerns. For Tesla, which already relies on CATL for LFP cells in multiple global markets, this is not a hypothetical dilemma. It is an active strategic question. CATL's battery does not merely compete with Tesla's in-house roadmap. It reframes the problem Tesla is trying to solve. Tesla and CATL. CATL has been supplying lithium iron phosphate battery cells for Tesla since 2020. Initially for Model 3 vehicles built in Shanghai, before expanding to Model Y and select European markets. Tesla confirmed the strategic importance of CATL-supplied LFP packs during its Q3 2020 and Q1 2021 earnings calls, framing LFP as a key enabler for cost control and volume scaling rather than performance leadership. By 2022, Tesla had shipped well over 1 million vehicles globally using CATL batteries, primarily in standard range trims of Model 3 and Model Y, making CATL not a marginal supplier but a foundational pillar of Tesla's mass-market lineup. This partnership was not driven by technology novelty, but by reliability at scale. CATL's prismatic LFP cells offered predictable yields, stable pricing, and lower supply chain risk at a time when Tesla was aggressively expanding production capacity in China and Europe. In other words, CATL helped Tesla solve a manufacturing problem, not a marketing one, ensuring Tesla could keep factories running at volume without exposing itself to volatile nickel and cobalt supply constraints. At the same time, Tesla has spent the past 5 years actively working to reduce long-term dependence on external battery suppliers. This intent became explicit at Tesla's Battery Day in 2020, when the company unveiled the 4680 cell and outlined a roadmap centered on in-house manufacturing, dry electrode processing, and structural battery packs. Since then, Tesla has invested billions into pilot lines in Fremont and Austin, publicly acknowledged yield challenges during 2022 and 2023 earnings calls, and repeatedly emphasized that battery manufacturing is one of the hardest problems it is trying to solve. These efforts make Tesla's position clear. Batteries are not just consumables to be sourced, but core architecture that determines vehicle cost, rigidity, and manufacturing efficiency. Even when progress has been slower than originally projected, Tesla has doubled down rather than retreated, adjusting timelines, renegotiating supplier contracts, and reprioritizing internal cell development. This history matters, because it shows that Tesla's hesitation to fully outsource batteries is not ideological stubbornness, but a calculated bet that long-term control will outweigh short-term advantages. The real impact of CATL's battery is not whether Tesla adopts it immediately. It is that the benchmark has moved. When a supplier can plausibly claim that the battery will outlast the car itself, Tesla is forced to reevaluate what differentiation really means in the next phase of EV adoption. The competition is no longer about who has the most advanced battery on paper, but who delivers the least friction, the least anxiety, and the longest usable life to ordinary drivers. How would Tesla actually use this battery? If Tesla were to use a battery from CATL in future vehicles, the most dramatic change would not show up on a spec sheet. It would show up in how ownership feels day after day. For a Model 2 type vehicle, battery choices would likely be driven by cost per kilowatt hour and durability rather than peak performance. Based on current LFP pack pricing trends in China and Europe, industry estimates suggest pack-level costs in the range of $65 to $80 per kilowatt-hour by 2026, assuming continued scale and stable raw material pricing. For a compact vehicle targeting a 40 to 50 kilowatt-hour usable pack, this implies a battery cost window of roughly $2,600 to $4,000 per vehicle, a threshold that makes a sub-$25,000 price point structurally feasible rather than aspirational. LFP chemistry would also align with Tesla's expected ownership profile for a mass-market vehicle. With typical cycle life estimates of 3,000 to 4,000 full charge cycles, even a conservative 250-mile real-world range would translate into 750,000 to 1 million miles of theoretical pack life. While few vehicles would ever reach that figure, the implication is clear. Battery degradation would be a secondary concern for most first and second owners, supporting Tesla's long-term cost of ownership narrative rather than short-term range marketing. Model Y, Juniper, expected to refresh Tesla's highest volume global platform, would likely continue to prioritize efficiency and manufacturing simplification rather than radical battery chemistry shifts. Current Model Y long-range variants deliver EPA-rated ranges around 310 to 330 miles. Incremental improvements from revised aerodynamics, power electronics, and potential structural pack refinements could reasonably push usable highway range gains of 5 to 8%, rather than dramatic leaps. In practical terms, this means Model Y Juniper would remain optimized for frequent, predictable charging behavior, not marathon single-leg drives. Tesla's supercharger network, now exceeding 50,000 fast chargers globally, reduces the marginal value of extreme range while rewarding faster charge curves and thermal stability. For regular road trip users, the experience would likely feel less about driving farther between stops, and more about shorter, more consistent charging sessions, a trade-off Tesla has increasingly favored as its vehicles move from early adopters to mainstream households. If CATL's battery delivers even part of what it promises, it doesn't just challenge competitors, it challenges how we think about owning an electric car. When charging takes minutes, degradation stops being a worry, and the battery outlasts the vehicle itself. The EV debate quietly shifts. It's no longer about specs or hype, it's about whether electric cars can finally become the obvious, low-stress choice for everyday life, and that's the question Tesla will have to answer next. If you want to keep following how battery technology, manufacturing decisions, and real-world economics are reshaping Tesla's future, consider subscribing. We break down what actually matters, without the hype, and focus on what these changes mean for real drivers, not just headlines. For years, electric vehicle makers have sold us one number range: 300 miles, 350 miles, 400 miles. But for most drivers, range isn't what drains your wallet. Insurance spikes, battery recalls, a $12,000 pack replacement, that's the real cost of ownership. So what if Tesla's $25,000 Model 2 doesn't chase more miles at all? What if a safer aluminum-ion battery could cut pack costs by thousands, lower fire risk, and save owners $5,000 to $7,000 over 5 years? And if that means slightly less range, would you even notice in daily driving? Honestly, this kind of deep, numbers-first analysis takes time to research and put together. So, if you find it useful, consider subscribing and turning on the bell. Now let's get into why aluminum-ion might matter more than range for the Model 2. How could aluminum-ion cut Model 2 costs by thousands and make range irrelevant? On any electric vehicle, especially a budget car like Tesla's rumored $25,000 Model 2, the battery isn't just another component. It's the component. The pack alone could represent $8,000 to $10,000 of the vehicle's build cost, roughly one-third to nearly half of the entire car. That means even small improvements at the cell level don't save a few $100s. They save thousands. And when you're targeting mainstream buyers instead of early adopters, thousands matter a lot more than an extra 40 miles on paper. That's where aluminum ion starts to look less like a science project and more like a business decision. Instead of lithium, nickel, and cobalt materials that are expensive, supply-constrained, and heavily refined, aluminum ion chemistry uses aluminum, one of the most abundant and cheapest metals on Earth. Aluminum is already produced at massive industrial scale for construction, packaging, and automotive parts, which makes sourcing easier and pricing far more stable. Lithium and nickel prices, by contrast, have swung wildly over the past few years, sometimes doubling or tripling within months. Those swings flow straight into battery costs and eventually into sticker prices. Aluminum doesn't behave like that. It's predictable, widely available, and frankly boring. For a mass-market car, boring is exactly what you want. Safety is the other piece most buyers don't think about until something goes wrong. Traditional lithium-ion cells pack a lot of energy into a small space, which is great for range but also means higher heat density. If a cell fails, that heat can cascade into thermal runaway, where one overheating cell triggers the next. That's how you get the battery fire headlines and the recalls that follow. Even if incidents are statistically rare, the financial consequences aren't. Owners deal with downtime. Insurance companies adjust premiums, and resale values take a hit. Over time, that low operating cost electric vehicle starts to feel less predictable. Aluminum ion cells, based on current research and early prototypes, tend to run cooler and rely on less flammable or non-flammable electrolytes. In simple terms, they're harder to ignite and less likely to spiral into a chain reaction. That doesn't just mean safer in theory, it means fewer expensive surprises in ownership, fewer recalls, fewer scary headlines, and potentially lower insurance risk. And for someone shopping a $25,000 car, that kind of stability is often more important than squeezing out every last mile of range. Of course, there's a trade-off. Aluminum ion doesn't match lithium ion in energy density yet. You probably won't see 350 or 400 miles from the same size pack. Realistically, you might be looking at something closer to 220 miles, 240 miles, maybe 260 miles depending on how Tesla packages it. But step back for a second and look at how people actually drive. 250 miles still covers several days of commuting. It still handles weekend trips with superchargers every couple of hours. It still feels completely normal for daily life. So if Tesla offered 250 miles instead of 320 miles, but knocked $3,000 to $4,000 off the price and reduced long-term risk, most mainstream buyers probably wouldn't hesitate. When you buy your next car, what matters more to you every month? Comment, pay less if you'd rather pay less upfront. Save $50, $70 per month, and worry less about fires or big repair bills, even with around 250 miles of range. Comment, pay more if you'd rather get the longest range possible, even if the car costs more and insurance stays higher. And share your reason in the comments. I'm curious how you think about it financially. If battery costs drop $2,000, $4,000 per car, could aluminum ion push Tesla's Model 2 below $25,000? Once you stop looking at batteries as a technology story and start looking at them as a cost problem, the math becomes very simple, very fast. On a compact electric vehicle like the Model 2, Tesla doesn't have much room to hide expenses. There's no luxury margin, no $60,000 price tag to absorb mistakes. Every $500 matters. Every $1,000 can change who can afford the car. And since the battery is still the most expensive single part of the vehicle, that's where the biggest leverage sits. Right now. Industry estimates often place lithium-based packs somewhere around $110 to $140 per kilowatt hour at the pack level, depending on chemistry and scale. If Tesla targets a practical 50 to 55 kilowatt hours pack for a smaller car, that alone translates to roughly $5,500 to $7,500 just for the battery hardware, before you even count cooling systems, structure, electronics, and assembly. Add everything together, and you're realistically staring at something closer to $8,000 to $10,000 tied up in the battery system. On a $25,000 car, that's not just expensive, that's dominant. It can represent nearly 40 cents of every dollar you pay. So imagine Tesla finds a way to cut even $40 or $50 per kilowatt hour using a cheaper chemistry and simpler materials. Across a 50 kilowatt hours pack, that's already $2,000 to $2,500 saved. If the reduction is closer to $60 or $70 per kilowatt hour, you're talking $3,000 to $3,500. Push it further with simpler thermal management and fewer safety reinforcements. And a $4,000 difference isn't unrealistic. Suddenly the numbers stop being theoretical. They become visible on the window sticker. And this is exactly where aluminum-ion has a strategic edge. Aluminum is dramatically cheaper than lithium and doesn't require nickel or cobalt at all. Those two metals alone are responsible for a big chunk of modern cell cost. Not to mention the refining complexity and geopolitical risk tied to their supply chains. Removing them simplifies everything. Fewer expensive inputs, fewer volatile markets, and potentially fewer processing steps. That's not just chemistry, that's manufacturing efficiency. There's also the indirect cost Tesla might save. A safer, cooler running cell could mean less aggressive cooling hardware, fewer layers of fire shielding, and less structural over-engineering to contain worst-case scenarios. Every pump, plate, and sensor adds dollars in weight. If aluminum-ion reduces heat stress, Tesla could shrink some of that overhead. Even shaving 20 or 30 pounds of cooling components and simplifying the pack design translates into lower materials cost and faster assembly time on the line. At scale, seconds per car matter. Minutes per car are huge. Now zoom out and think about what that means for pricing strategy. If Tesla really saves $3,000 to $4,000 per vehicle at the battery level, they have options. They could pass the savings straight to buyers and sell a Model 2 for $22,000 to $23,000, which would undercut most gas cars and almost every other electric vehicle on the market. Or they could keep the sticker at $25,000 and quietly increase margins, giving themselves room to handle incentives, tariffs, or future price wars. Or they could split the difference, drop the price slightly while improving profitability. From a business standpoint, all three are powerful, and this is where range starts to look like the wrong battlefield. Adding 50 extra miles might cost Tesla another $800 to $1,000 in cells. That extra capacity doesn't make the car safer, doesn't lower insurance, doesn't reduce depreciation. It just looks good in a brochure, cutting $3,000 out of the battery. On the other hand, directly changes monthly payments. At current loan rates, $3,000 less on the purchase price could mean $50 to $60 lower per month over 5 years. That's real money for mainstream buyers. That's groceries, utilities, or part of your insurance bill. There's also the long-term stability factor. Lithium and nickel markets have proven they can spike overnight, which makes it harder for automakers to promise consistent pricing year after year. Aluminum's supply is far more mature and diversified. If Tesla can lock in long-term aluminum contracts, they can predict costs more accurately. Predictable costs mean predictable vehicle pricing, and predictable pricing builds trust with buyers who don't want to see the same car swing $5,000 in either direction every quarter. Put all of this together and aluminum-ion stops looking like a niche experiment and starts looking like a financial tool. It's not about chasing the most advanced chemistry on Earth. It's about hitting a number that unlocks the mass market. Because the difference between a $29,000 electric vehicle and a true $25,000 or even $23,000 electric vehicle isn't just $4,000 or $6,000. It's millions of potential customers who suddenly can afford one. If Tesla's goal with Model 2 is volume, not bragging rights, then the smartest battery might not be the one with the longest range. It might be the one that makes the entire car cheaper to build in the first place. And if aluminum-ion can realistically cut several $1,000s out of every pack, that single decision could matter more to buyers than any extra miles Tesla could. But here's the part most people don't stop to question. If the battery is cheaper, does that automatically make the car cheaper to own? What happens if lower energy density means more weight, shorter real-world range, or weaker resale value 3 years down the road? And could a budget battery quietly cost drivers more in electricity, tiers, and depreciation? We're breaking down the real risks if Tesla chooses aluminum-ion for Model 2, not the lab promises, but what it could actually mean for your daily driving, your wallet, and long-term ownership. If aluminum-ion batteries so cheap and fast to charge, why isn't every electric vehicle already using it right now? Almost every modern electric vehicle from Tesla to BYD to Ford Motor Company runs on lithium-ion or lithium iron phosphate packs. These batteries work because lithium stores a lot of energy in a small space. Think of it like highly concentrated fuel. A relatively compact 50 kilowatt-hours pack can already push a small car 250 to 300 miles. Instead of lithium, aluminum-ion uses aluminum as the main charge carrier. And aluminum has two obvious advantages right away. It's extremely cheap and extremely abundant. There's also another big promise: charging speed. In lab conditions, aluminum-ion cells can accept energy very quickly because of how ions move between electrodes. In theory, that could mean shorter charging stops and less heat stress. Add in better fire resistance compared to some lithium chemistries, and on paper it starts to look like the safe and affordable battery the mass market has been waiting for. So if it's cheaper, safer, and fast to charge, what's the catch? And this is exactly where the big question begins for a future low-cost Model 2. If aluminum-ion sounds less efficient on paper, why would Tesla even consider it for a $25,000 Model 2 in the first place? Now here's where we need to look at this from Tesla's side, not the driver's side. Because from an engineering perspective, aluminum-ion has clear weaknesses. But from a manufacturing and cost perspective, it starts to look surprisingly logical, especially if the goal is to build a truly affordable electric vehicle that can sell for around $25,000 to $27,000 before incentives. Right now, battery cost is still the single most expensive part of any electric car. In many cases, the pack alone can account for $7,000 to $10,000 of the total vehicle cost, depending on size and chemistry. Even with cheaper lithium iron phosphate packs, you're still talking about thousands of dollars tied up in raw materials like lithium, nickel, and processed cathodes. Aluminum is dramatically cheaper than lithium on a commodity level. We're not talking small differences. Lithium carbonate prices have historically swung between $15,000 and over $60,000 per ton during supply squeezes, while aluminum often sits closer to $2,000 to $3,000 per ton. It's easier to mine, easier to refine, and already supported by a massive global supply chain because it's used in construction, packaging, and transportation. There's also the supply stability angle. Tesla has already experienced lithium bottlenecks in the past. Battery factories can't scale if raw materials spike in price or become politically restricted. A chemistry that depends less on lithium could reduce exposure to those risks. Fewer supply shocks, fewer price spikes, more predictable production planning. And Tesla historically cares more about predictable cost curves than chasing next-gen hype. Just look at what they actually use today. Instead of jumping straight to exotic solid-state batteries, Tesla expanded lithium iron phosphate, first a cheaper, more stable chemistry across standard range vehicles. It wasn't glamorous, but it lowered costs and improved durability. So aluminum-ion fits that same pattern of thinking: practical, scalable, inexpensive. Then there's charging behavior. If aluminum-ion cells can safely accept higher charge rates with less heat, that could mean shorter stops at fast chargers. For city drivers or apartment dwellers, quicker top-ups could offset some of the range limitations. A car that charges from 20 to 80% in 15 minutes might feel more usable day-to-day than one that takes 30 minutes, even if total range is lower. For an urban commuter car, that's a real selling point. And remember what Model 2 is supposed to be. Not a long-distance highway cruiser like a Tesla Model Y. Not a performance sedan like a Tesla Model 3. It's rumored to be a compact, lightweight, mass-market vehicle, something closer to a daily appliance. If a lower-cost chemistry saves even $1,500 to $2,000 per car at scale, multiply that by 1 million vehicles per year. That's $1.5 billion to $2 billion in annual savings. Few engineering optimizations can match that kind of impact. So from the company's perspective, aluminum-ion isn't about being better. It's about being cheaper, simpler, and easier to mass-produce. On paper, it checks several boxes: lower raw material cost, less dependency on lithium markets, potentially safer thermals, possibly faster charging, and a pathway to finally hitting that psychological $25,000 price tag that could open the floodgates for mainstream buyers. And if you're sitting inside Tesla's factory planning meetings, that sounds very tempting. But here's the key problem. What looks efficient at the factory doesn't always translate to efficient for the owner. Saving money at production is one thing. Saving money over 5 or 7 years of real-world driving is something completely different. And that's exactly where the real risks begin to show up. What does that really cost you after 5 years of ownership? This is where the conversation shifts from chemistry and manufacturing to something much simpler: daily life. Because most drivers don't care what metal is inside the battery, they care about 3 things: how far the car goes, how much it costs to run, and how much it's worth when they sell it. And this is exactly where an aluminum-ion pack could quietly create trade-offs that don't show up on a spec sheet. Let's start with the most basic physics problem: weight. If aluminum-ion stores less energy per kilogram, the only way to deliver the same usable capacity is to make the pack bigger and heavier. There's no software fix for that. You can't over-the-air update your way around gravity. Say a small lithium-based pack today stores around 50 kilowatt-hours and weighs roughly 300 kilograms. If aluminum-ion only delivers about half to two-thirds the energy density, you could be looking at 450, maybe even 600 kilograms to store that same 50 kilowatt-hours. That's an extra 150 to 300 kilograms permanently inside the car. That's not a small difference. Put that in real-world terms. That's like driving around every day with 4 adult passengers you never drop off. And extra mass doesn't just affect performance numbers, it affects everything. Acceleration gets slower. Braking distances get longer. Suspension components work harder. Tires wear faster. And, most importantly, energy consumption goes up. A heavier car simply needs more electricity to move the same distance. If a lightweight compact electric vehicle normally averages around 4 miles per kilowatt-hour, adding hundreds of kilograms might pull that down to 3.5 or even 3.3 miles per kilowatt-hour in mixed driving. That doesn't sound dramatic at first, but over time it adds up fast. Drive 12,000 miles a year, and that difference could mean using an extra 300 to 400 kilowatt-hours annually. At typical U.S. residential rates of 15 cents to 20 cents per kilowatt-hour, that's another $50 to $80 every year, just in electricity. Over 5 years, you're already looking at a few $100s. And that's only energy. Now add tires. Heavier vehicles chew through rubber faster. Anyone who owns a large SUV or truck already knows this. More weight equals more friction, more heat, and shorter tire life. If you're replacing tires 5,000 to 10,000 miles sooner than expected, That's easily another $600 to $1,000 over several years. Then there's range, the number people look at first when buying an electric vehicle. If Tesla wants to keep the pack smaller to control weight and cost, they may simply accept lower range. Instead of 250 to 300 miles, like many current entry-level electric vehicles, maybe you get 160 to 180 miles. For some drivers, that's fine. But for many households, especially in North America where commutes are longer and road trips are common, that turns the car into a second vehicle rather than a primary one. And once a car can't comfortably handle a weekend highway trip without multiple stops, its practicality drops fast. But the biggest risk isn't range or electricity. It's uncertainty. Aluminum-ion is still largely experimental at automotive scale. There aren't millions of these packs on the road with 10 years of data. There's no long track record of degradation curves, winter performance, or real-world failure rates. And buyers notice that. First-generation technology always carries risk. We've seen it with early dual-clutch transmissions, early turbo engines, and early electric vehicle batteries. The first wave of owners basically becomes the test group. If long-term durability turns out worse than expected, say noticeable capacity loss after 80,000 or 100,000 miles, resale values drop quickly. And resale value is one of the biggest hidden ownership costs most people ignore. Imagine two used cars sitting side by side 3 years from now. Same price, same mileage. One has proven lithium iron phosphate chemistry with millions of cars on the road. The other has a newer aluminum-ion pack with limited history. Which one would you trust? Most buyers choose the safer bet. That means lower trade-in offers, lower private sale prices, and faster depreciation. Losing just $1,500 to $2,000 in resale value wipes out most of the original battery savings instantly. There's also the charging ecosystem question. Even if aluminum-ion looks fast in lab tests, real-world charging depends on how well it integrates with existing hardware. Today's fast chargers, including Tesla supercharger stations, are optimized around lithium battery voltage curves and thermal behavior. If a new chemistry requires different voltage ranges or thermal management, peak speeds on paper may not translate to consistent speeds on the road. You might see impressive numbers for a few minutes, then aggressive throttling. So instead of charging faster, you just charge differently and not necessarily better. If the Model 2 lands around $25,000, what matters more to you, upfront cost or total ownership cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If BYD ships a 500-mile solid-state electric vehicle before Tesla, the narrative flips overnight, not because of range, because of cost. In 2026, solid state isn't about hype anymore. BYD, Donut Lab, and QuantumScape are running pilot lines. And what about Tesla? Are they preparing quietly or strategically waiting for the economics to break in their favor? Today, we're breaking down the real signals behind Tesla's solid-state strategy, how close competitors like BYD and QuantumScape are to true scale, and the exact cost, volume, and durability numbers that would force Tesla to move. 1. How prepared is Tesla for solid-state batteries in 2026? Now look at Tesla's own positioning. Through late 2025, Tesla continued expanding 4680 production and vertical battery manufacturing capabilities. Industry estimates place lithium iron phosphate cell pricing around $60 per kilowatt-hour at large scale in 2025 to 2026. Solid-state developers, by contrast, are expected to enter the market initially at a premium that could exceed $70 to $80 per kilowatt-hour before scale efficiencies. That delta of roughly 15 to 25% is critical. It explains why immediate mass adoption is economically challenging, but also why Tesla would closely monitor cost trajectories. From a technology standpoint, Tesla's structural battery pack architecture already aligns with higher density chemistries. If solid-state achieves 400 watt-hours per kilogram at the cell level, even after pack-level integration losses. It could materially exceed current lithium-ion pack densities estimated in the 250 to 300 watt-hours per kilogram range. Tesla's existing move toward structural integration reduces module complexity, which is compatible with simplified solid-state pack designs if thermal requirements are lower. Through late 2025, Tesla continued scaling 4680 production alongside in-house cathode processing and expansion of its dry electrode manufacturing approach, a method designed to reduce energy use and factory footprint per gigawatt-hour while improving yield. The company has also indicated progressive increases in silicon content within lithium-based anodes to raise energy density. These investments are not limited to conventional liquid electrolyte cells. Dry coating, vertical cathode integration, and structural pack architecture are manufacturing capabilities that can support multiple chemistries. At the same time, Tesla controls its battery management system firmware, charging algorithms, thermal management, and supercharger integration in-house. That vertical control stack means if solid-state validation cells become viable in 2026, Tesla can test and integrate them within an already unified hardware and software ecosystem rather than relying on fragmented third-party systems. In terms of production readiness, Tesla's advantage lies in manufacturing scaling rather than inventing new chemistries internally. The 4680 ramp demonstrated Tesla's willingness to industrialize new formats once yield and throughput become viable. Solid-state companies are currently solving exactly those issues. If pilot lines in 2026 demonstrate stable yield and consistent quality, Tesla's vertically integrated manufacturing stack positions it to transition more quickly once economics justify it. Supply chain optionality is another signal. Tesla has historically secured upstream contracts in advance of scaling battery transitions, including lithium refining and cathode materials. There is no public disclosure in early 2026 confirming Tesla has locked in a solid electrolyte supply. However, the fact that companies like BYD are targeting commercial output within a 1 to 2 year window suggests material supply networks are beginning to industrialize. That alone increases the plausibility of behind-the-scenes evaluation discussions. Although Tesla has not yet made any clear statements or taken any action regarding solid-state batteries, their readiness in terms of technology, manufacturing, research, integration capabilities, and supply chain opens up the possibility of developing this type of battery by the end of 2026. If solid-state closes the cost gap from roughly a 20% premium toward parity while sustaining automotive-grade cycle life, Tesla's infrastructure suggests integration would be technically and industrially feasible. But let's be honest. If Tesla announced tomorrow that they were testing solid-state cells behind closed doors, would you rather they launch it fast in limited volume just to be first? Or wait until it's cheap enough to cut $1,000 off the price of your next Tesla? Type fast below if you want breakthrough speed and range now. Or cheap below if you'd rather see Tesla use solid-state only when it makes the car meaningfully more affordable. We are genuinely curious where you stand. How close are BYD, QuantumScape, and Donut Lab to putting solid-state batteries into real vehicles by 2026? As of early 2026, 3 different solid-state strategies are emerging, and they reveal very different competitive endgames. QuantumScape has entered pilot production with its Eagle line, focusing on anode-free lithium metal cells and ceramic separators, targeting energy densities above 400 watt-hours per kilogram at the cell level. BYD has publicly outlined small-batch solid-state production beginning in 2027, with similar 400 watt-hours per kilogram targets and long-term goals up to 500 watt-hours per kilogram. Donut Lab positions itself around high-density solid-state cells near the 400 watt-hours per kilogram mark for niche performance applications. That is the current scoreboard. But the real race is not about who reaches 400 watt-hours per kilogram first. It is about who can scale close to $60 to $70 per kilowatt-hour. Today, Large-scale lithium iron phosphate production in China sits near $60 per kilowatt-hour at the cell level. If solid-state enters the market 20 to 30% higher than that, it will stay in premium vehicles, not mass-market electric vehicles. That shifts the competition from lab performance to cost control. BYD's strength is vertical integration and existing gigafactory scale. If it achieves 400 watt-hours per kilogram while controlling its own production lines, it can introduce solid-state in high-end models while protecting volume sales with lithium iron phosphate and sodium ion. That reduces risk and protects margins. QuantumScape's edge is its differentiated anode-free design, which could deliver higher density and safety, but it depends on partners for large-scale manufacturing. Its challenge is not chemistry alone, but achieving gigawatt-hour output with stable yield. Donut Lab represents a high-density startup model suited for low-volume performance platforms, not mass electric vehicle production without multi-gigawatt-hour capacity. For Tesla, this competition does not force immediate action, but it creates pressure points. If BYD proves it can mass-produce solid-state cells at costs close to today's lithium-ion levels, Tesla must have solid-state because this battery will shift from a future technology to a competitive necessity. If QuantumScape demonstrates stable multi-year durability data and narrows cost gaps, that becomes strategically relevant. But until one of these players proves not just density but scalable economics, lithium-ion remains competitive. If QuantumScape can prove its cells last for years under real driving conditions and reduce costs close to today's lithium-ion levels, Tesla would have strong reasons to evaluate integration. But if solid-state remains more expensive and unproven at scale, Tesla's improving lithium-ion technology remains the safer and more competitive choice in 2026. 3. How possible is it if Tesla chooses to partner on solid-state batteries? As of early 2026, there is no public evidence that Tesla has signed a large-scale solid-state supply agreement with QuantumScape, White, or Donut Lab. No Securities and Exchange Commission filing. No earnings disclosure. No gigawatt-hour purchase order has surfaced. That absence is meaningful because battery contracts at automotive scale typically appear in financial reporting or partner announcements. So, if Tesla chooses to partner on solid-state batteries, what are the driving factors? The first trigger is cost. Large-scale lithium iron phosphate production in 2025 to 2026 is estimated near $60 per kilowatt-hour at the cell level. On a 60 kilowatt-hour vehicle, that equals roughly $3,600 in cell cost. If early solid-state cells enter the market at around $75 to $80 per kilowatt-hour, that increases the cost by approximately $900 to $1,200 per vehicle before pack integration. For Tesla to justify integration at scale, that premium would likely need to narrow to within roughly 10 to 15% of lithium-ion pricing. The second trigger is volume. Tesla delivers over 1 million vehicles annually. Even allocating solid-state to 10% of production would require multiple gigawatt-hours per year. In 2026, most solid-state programs remain at pilot scale, measured in megawatt-hours. Until a supplier demonstrates stable gigawatt-hour throughput with high manufacturing yield, large-scale partnership remains industrially difficult. The third trigger is durability. Automotive batteries must survive hundreds to thousands of full equivalent cycles under repeated fast charging and thermal stress. Public roadmaps from leading solid-state developers suggest small batch deployment beginning around 2027, with broader scale closer to 2029 or 2030. That timeline indicates 2026 is more likely a year of validation than mass integration. What does this reveal about Tesla's future position? It suggests Tesla does not need to rush into a public partnership. Instead, the company can evaluate solid-state quietly while monitoring cost convergence, capacity expansion, and real-world durability data. If a supplier proves 3 metrics at once, then the partnership shifts from optional to strategically compelling. Until then, Tesla's leverage remains strong. The future of collaboration is not determined by chemistry headlines. It will be determined by when performance, scale, and economics converge in the same year. For solid-state batteries in 2026, the real battlefield is not chemistry. It is scale, cost, and timing. And when those three align, that is when Tesla moves. The question is not if, it is when. We will follow every movement of Tesla. So make sure to follow our channel not to lose track. Do you remember Donut Lab with their big claim? A solid-state battery that charges from 0 to 80% in 4.5 minutes? Sounds like the breakthrough every electric vehicle driver has been waiting for. But when that same cell quietly climbs to 90 degrees Celsius during testing, the real question isn't just how fast it charges, it's what that heat actually means. Once you scale it into a full-size battery pack, sitting under your car on a 35-degree summer day, this is exactly what we're breaking down today. Is 90 degrees Celsius a genuine thermal warning once you scale from one lab cell to hundreds inside a tightly packed electric vehicle battery? If a single cell reaches 90 degrees Celsius at 11C charging, what does that mean? When the independent test results came out of VTT Technical Research Center of Finland, the headline number sounded impressive on paper. Donut Lab's solid-state cell was pushed to an extreme 11C charge rate, roughly the kind of current that, scaled up, would imply well over 1,000 kilowatts for a full electric vehicle pack. Under those conditions, the cell climbed from 0 to 80% state of charge in just 4.5 minutes. For context, most production lithium-ion electric vehicles today fast charge somewhere between 2C and 4C, with only the most aggressive systems briefly touching 5C or 6C in ideal temperatures. 11C is not normal fast charging, it's stress test territory. But alongside that speed came another number that triggered debate temperature. During the test, the surface temperature of the single cell rose from about 26 degrees Celsius to 63 degrees Celsius when using 2 heat sinks. With only one heat sink and more limited passive cooling, the temperature climbed further, eventually reaching 90 degrees Celsius. At that point, the lab stopped the test for safety reasons. That single moment 90 degrees is where the entire argument begins to split. On one side, you have the interpretation presented by the Electric Viking, who looked at that temperature and saw a red flag, not because the cell failed, but because of what it implies when you zoom out from one isolated cell to an actual electric vehicle. His reasoning is straightforward and rooted in pack engineering, not chemistry. A single cell sitting in a controlled chamber with direct heat sinks and carefully managed airflow is the easiest thermal environment that battery will ever experience. Real cars are the opposite. In a real 60-80 kilowatt-hours pack, hundreds or thousands of cells are packed tightly, each heating its neighbors with limited airflow, plus added heat from bus bars and electronics, all in ambient temps up to 45 degrees Celsius. So his concern isn't that the cell can't survive. It's that scaling this behavior to pack level would almost certainly require aggressive thermal management liquid cooling loops, pumps, channels, extra materials, more complexity, more weight, and ultimately more cost. And every one of those additions eats into the very advantages Donut Lab is advertising: simplicity, energy density, and price competitiveness. But then I read the top comments under the discussion, and the tone shifts. Several viewers push back with a different interpretation. They point out that the test wasn't stopped because the battery failed, degraded, or went into thermal runaway. It was stopped because of lab safety protocols. The facility has predefined temperature limits, and once the cell hit 90 degrees Celsius, the technicians simply followed procedure. From their point of view, that number doesn't represent a hard limit of the battery at all. It just represents where the lab chose to say, that's enough for today. And technically, they're not wrong. Industrial cells, power electronics, and many high-current components can tolerate short periods at elevated temperatures without immediate damage. When you push massive current through any conductor, even a pure copper bar, you get resistive heating. That's just basic physics. At 11C, you are forcing enormous current through the system. Of course, it gets hot. The comments argue that this isn't evidence of a flaw. It's simply what happens when you stress any battery this hard. So their conclusion is different. To them, using that temperature as proof that pack-level charging is not feasible feels premature. The data only shows that the cell heats up under 11C. It doesn't prove that a properly engineered pack with active cooling couldn't handle it. And this is where the debate gets interesting. If both sides use the same 90 degrees Celsius number, why do their conclusions sound completely different once you put it inside a real car pack? The number is the same, but the reference frame is different. In a laboratory, temperature is often pushed on purpose. Engineers deliberately drive small prototype cells with aggressive current loads to find failure limits. Not everyday behavior. A test cell might only hold a few amp hours, maybe 1 to 5 amp hours, and when you slam it with very high current, it heats up fast simply because it has very little mass to absorb that heat. That spike doesn't automatically mean danger. It means the cell is being stressed well beyond normal operating conditions to expose weaknesses. It's similar to revving an engine on a dyno until it screams. Nobody commutes at that RPM. But you still want to know where the limit is. From that lab perspective, the top comments argument makes sense. If the test was paused because of lab constraints or instrumentation limits rather than a true chemical failure, then 90 degrees Celsius is just a stress marker, not proof the chemistry is unusable. The cell didn't burst into flames, didn't short catastrophically, and didn't show immediate runaway. For a materials scientist, that can actually look like progress. It suggests the electrolyte and structure remain stable even when pushed hard. But the moment you move from a single test cell to a full vehicle pack, the physics changes in ways that are easy to underestimate. A production electric vehicle is not one donut-shaped prototype. It's hundreds or thousands of cells working together inside a tightly packaged, insulated structure. Look at something like the Tesla Model Y. A typical version carries around 75 kilowatt-hours of energy storage and hundreds of kilograms of battery mass. That energy isn't concentrated in one unit. It's distributed across modules filled with many cells packed closely together. 90 degrees Celsius in one isolated lab cell is manageable because you can cool it directly and there's nothing nearby to influence. 90 degrees Celsius across many cells inside a sealed module is different. Now you're dealing with heat spreading from cell to cell, uneven temperature zones, and the need for liquid cooling plates to continuously pull out kilowatts of waste heat. If one section runs hotter, neighboring cells age faster. If cooling isn't perfectly balanced, you create thermal gradients that shorten life and complicate safety margins. In the worst case, you don't just have one hot cell, you have a cluster. And clusters are how cascading failures begin. This is where the author's skepticism actually lives. Most real-world electric vehicle packs aim to keep cells roughly in the 25 to 45 degrees Celsius range during daily driving. Even under fast charging, many systems try to stay below about 55 or 60 degrees Celsius. Once you consistently approach 70 degrees Celsius or higher, degradation accelerates. Cooling systems get heavier, and efficiency drops. Pumps need to be stronger, coolant channels larger, and structural parts thicker. All of that adds weight and cost. And weight and cost are exactly what matter to buyers. Add just 10 to 20 kilograms of extra cooling hardware and you either lose range or you compensate with a larger battery. A larger battery means more cells, more raw materials, and a higher sticker price. Suddenly, a chemistry that looked exciting in the lab becomes economically questionable on the showroom floor. If 90 degrees Celsius sounds scary today, why have almost every new battery looked risky, impractical, or impossible in its early years? If you zoom out from Donut Lab's test data for a second, something interesting appears. This exact pattern, early lab numbers that look messy, hot, inefficient, or unsafe has happened almost every time a new battery chemistry tried to enter the auto industry. The first results rarely look clean. They look unstable, controversial, and easy to criticize. Yet a decade later, those same technologies quietly power millions of vehicles. Take early lithium-ion packs. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, large-format electric vehicle batteries were not considered safe or proven by most of the industry. Temperatures were high, cooling systems were bulky, and degradation curves were unpredictable. Back then, even 50 to 60 degrees Celsius under heavy load worried engineers. Thermal runaway headlines were everywhere. There were constant questions about whether lithium-ion could ever be safe enough for family cars, let alone mass adoption. Then companies like Tesla went all in anyway. Early vehicles such as the Tesla Roadster used thousands of small cylindrical cells packed tightly together. Critics said it was risky, overly complex, and a fire hazard waiting to happen. And to be fair, early packs did run hot and required heavy liquid cooling systems. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't cheap. It definitely wasn't optimized. But over time, engineering closed the gap. Better cell chemistry, smarter battery management systems, more precise cooling plates, and tighter software control gradually pushed operating temperatures down and reliability up. What looked fragile at first became boringly stable. Today, millions of lithium-ion packs operate daily without drama. The same chemistry that once scared investors now powers everything from compact sedans to delivery vans. Even more recent transitions followed the same path. Look at LFP, lithium iron phosphate. For years, it was dismissed as low energy density and only suitable for buses or low-range vehicles. Analysts said it couldn't compete with nickel-rich chemistries. Yet now it's widely used in entry and mid-range cars because it's cheaper, safer, and lasts longer. Vehicles like the Tesla Model 3 standard range versions run LFP packs that routinely exceed 3,000 full cycles. The lesson here is simple but important. Early lab numbers almost always look worse than final products. High temperatures, awkward constraints, heavy cooling, and strange limitations are normal during the experimental stage. Engineers intentionally push extremes because that's how you find the edges. This isn't a fight between the author is wrong or the commenters are right. It's a difference in lens. So what do you think? If a new battery can charge insanely fast but runs hotter in early testing, would you still trust it in your next car? Do you care more about lab performance or long-term reliability and cost? At the end of the day, the Model 2 isn't a chemistry race, but a math problem. Drop your thoughts below. You would choose a battery that is cheaper, suffer, or longer range. If this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture, like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss our next Tesla deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.